Please welcome Mr. Gary Kim, PTC'13 Program Committee Co-Chair and Editor of IP Carrier.
Hello all. So I'm a simple kind of guy, and what we're going to try to do in this panel is just ask one fundamental question and then try to get one set of pretty simple answers, and that is, if you assume we're in a world now where more of the traffic that's flowing over the global network is content rather than voice or other kinds of traffic, does that actually have any implications for people who design and build and operate networks? And since I'm not a media company, I actually don't know the answer to that question. I'm hoping some of our guests are going to be able to shed some light on that. And it's sort of a, are you guys ready, by the way? Okay, come on out. You don't have to listen to me. You can listen to the people who know things.
Okay, so.
And boy, they weren't kidding. They said when you come out,
chairs.
go around the back of the chairs. These are big chairs. So just to get started, what I'd like to do is ask each of you to give us 4 or 5 minutes on your company's involvement in providing services to content providers, or if you're Kara, I want you to throw a bomb.
All right.
Okay?
Sounds good.
Ishikawa-san, do you want to go first?
I'm Ishikawa from mmbi, Tokyo, Japan. So our company is a mobile broadcasting company. It sounds like old-fashioned business, but I'd like to introduce some part. This is the main shareholder is NTT Docomo. So they have a strategy to be total service providers. So the investment to a company is one of the elements of that kind of things. And we adopt ISDBT, that is the ITU standard. And the normal broadcasting, in addition to the normal broadcasting streaming services, we provide storage type services. So every morning you can have the electronic newspapers every morning. And right now, so the average is 1 gigabyte of the files, video, audio, and newspapers, magazines, such kind of things. You can get 1 gigabyte every day. So it's a good functionality and also for the mobile receiving condition is not stable. So the ISDBT have some functionality to the combination of the broadcasting networks and the telecom networks. So most of the part is transmitted through the broadcasting networks, but the 100% delivery is impossible for everyone. So the missing part is automatically received from using the telecom networks. And in the morning you wake up, you can watch or you can use your newspapers anytime, anywhere. So that is one part of our services. So we start this service last April. In this 9 months, so we get over 500,000 subscribers right now. But our target subscriber number in this end of March is 1 million. Oh, it's a big number. These kind of things is one of the example of the network collaboration or cooperation. So because especially for the mobile telecom networks, the price is not free, and so there is no flat rate in real sense. So there is some limitation of the usage in accordance with the storage volume. So in the sense, so using the broadcasting network is very economical sense. It's a good way. So probably this is the old-fashioned to make it reborn, to give new functionalities. And also, we will not like, we don't want to be a dumb pipe. So we are the broadcasting companies, so we make our own programs, and not the existing ordinary programs So we combine the communication functionality and also the storage type and real-time services. And also using the social networks, we want to make it to a new format of the programs right now. So we are trying several types of programs right now. So one of the examples is the customer or the user join the planning, the program planning meetings using the Google+. So, but in the real program is shooted by the professional. The quality is so high, but the customer has a feeling of participate the kind of things. And also, our main device is a smartphone. So it already has communication networks. So, for example, it's very easy case. So the quiz shows. So only the MC is on the TV screen. All the audience is the participant. So that is one of the examples. So anyway, so we want to create a new lifestyle of this kind of services. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Now, Mike, you're from my hometown, and you've been in this business for a very long time. Originally, we're spun out from Time Warner, so you probably have a little bit more understanding of content folks and what they might be looking for. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a little bit about TW Telecom. We're a business communications provider across the United States and in Hawaii here. And you know, it's interesting, you mentioned as we've seen this evolve over the years, I think we're in a fundamental shift in the way that people are addressing how they're delivering applications and content, and not just to the consumer, but also to the business customer. There's a wide range of applications that the business consumers are looking to, and you know, so much talk about cloud and those kinds of capabilities. But I think fundamental shift we're seeing is in the network. The network's capabilities to adapt to meet the demands of those content providers and those people delivering those solutions, whether it be a consumer-oriented application or a business-oriented application. I think we're in this transition. We refer to it as Telco 2.0, where you're looking at how we can provision services, how you deliver capabilities, how you deliver scale, and it's fundamentally changing from the nailed-up point-to-point sort of infrastructure we've had in the past to a more on-demand, consume what you need, pay for what you use sort of approach. And it's interesting to see that we're moving from these circuits that we used to build to a notion of services that we're delivering to customers, that they can integrate capabilities and new applications across a service delivery platform as opposed to just point-to-point sorts of circuits, right? That we're migrating away from technologies that are traditional telco, TDM, T1s, DS3s, E1s, et cetera, to Ethernet and much more scalability, that it plugs into what customers already have today. And we're seeing that you can automate the provisioning process so that you can give scalability on demand. And I think about where people are building these content delivery sorts of networks, and even using a mobile environment where you need to be able to push lots of capacity in a very short period of time. I think about, you know, just at a sporting event. Here's where you have now demands on the network and consumers that just show up in one place quickly for a brief period of time. You need to have flexibility around the way we deliver the network, right? So what we've done is tried to focus on how we can enable those applications, connect to the content providers directly, and give customers a wide range of on-demand access so they can literally see what's going on in the network in real time so they can prioritize and make business decisions about applications and where they're going to manage them. We can give customers bandwidth on demand so they can literally double or triple the capacity that they consume in real time without taking them out of service. And when they're done with that, it goes back to the way it was. So they don't have to over-provision infrastructure. And I think what we need to do is look at how we're delivering a more intelligent network, not the big dumb pipes, right? That we're migrating away from that, and that it's not a brute force sort of strategy around how you deliver applications across these networks these days. We have to give the flexibility to the customer so that they can expand capacity, rearrange and prioritize the network resources available so that they can better manage the experience that they're trying to deliver, that user experience in a more comprehensive way. That it's not just brute force with big dumb pipes. It's an interesting time to be in this industry because of the transition we're seeing, and it's going to keep going.
As Kara said last year, some of you in this industry may want to just, go away, lay down, and die.
Yeah.
which no one asked you to follow up on.
Sure.
And go ahead and make whatever comments you want, but if you want to take that train and run with it.
I don't want you to die, really, literally, but actually I do. I think the point I was making was when we're talking about networks, I always start with the consumer because there was a really smart Disney executive a couple of years ago who said consumers have taken control of the situation and they're not planning on giving it back any longer. And I think one of the things that I find it difficult when I'm talking to either Hollywood or network providers or anywhere along this particular food chain of what a network is, and it can be different. Network is different for everything, but for all intents and purposes, the network doesn't exist anymore to consumers. They don't think of it that way. They don't conceive of it that way. They don't live that way because of especially in the last 2 years, because of two things: the huge growth of smartphones, which they use very liberally and adeptly, and especially younger people, and the huge growth of tablets. This year, tablets are going to surpass PCs and laptops in terms of sales. And it's not going back. And these are consumers making these choices. And so if anyone who has children, I'm going to go on a very simple level, anyone who has children knows there is no such thing as a network for children. The network for my children is Apple TV, Roku, Comcast On Demand, and things they pull down off of YouTube. They create their own networks. And so you have to start, even though that's a very simple concept, you have to start from where the consumer is and how they are assembling their networks. Everything else doesn't matter. Whatever you present to them doesn't matter. They want to have it available to them at a cost that's not prohibitive in terms of killing it off, killing off the demand that's there. And thirdly, in a way that they don't have to think about it in a very seamless fashion, that they don't have to think about where and how they're going to get it from. And unfortunately, a lot of the businesses are trying to preserve their old business models and how they present things to people instead of thinking about how they themselves might use it and how their own children or their own family uses it. So one of the things I always tend to do is start with the consumer because they're so in control of everything, including to business customers. Businesses are now getting their clues from what consumers are doing because people go home and have a certain experience and they want the same experience when they're in businesses. And so I always look to exactly what the consumers are doing, and I see 4 things they're doing. They share. They share all over the place, and that's of course the larger social thing that's happening, which means that's how they discover programming, that's how they discover their needs and therefore their demands from the network. 2, and that's a huge deal. It's not just Facebook. Social is not just Facebook. It's the concept of sharing everything, Instagram or video or text or articles or Twitter, wherever they share like massively. And so that and then that creates the way demand is pulled, and therefore you can't imagine what it's going to be because you don't know how people are going to share and what they're going to share.
It's all pull.
It's all pull.
Very little push.
Yes, exactly. It can be push, but marketing is very difficult in this environment to this customer. They find things in different ways. Besides social, the second one thing is obviously mobile. Mobile is the biggest and most important trend of the next 10 years.
And is mobile the most important trend because it's going to increase the amount of on-demand viewing that occurs?
Because that's how people behave now. The phone is your best friend. It's like unfortunately, the geeks were right with Star Trek. This is the communicator. This does everything. And so you have to think about, it's a mini computer. This is more powerful than the computer. I'm old as hell, but this is more powerful than the computer I had in college. It does more things. It's an astonishing device. And of course, in a tablet format, in the 7-inch tablet format, people like that, like the Nexus 7 or the mini iPad. It's a very powerful device. So mobile is the most critical element of the whole thing. Local, is the third one, is that you can get, that you can use it in a local format and rather quickly kind of thing. And the last one is robustness and cost of what you get, the speed and and how much it costs to pull it down. And so you're not mucking around with your telco or your Comcast or whoever and paying exorbitant amounts of money and confused by the whole thing. So that you create a situation that's very easy for consumers to understand the value proposition of what they're doing and not worrying about their kids pulling down. I mean, I spend a lot of time worrying about my children and in YouTube videos constantly about because they have a mini iPad. And then the last thing I think that's critically important to think about is how it's presented to you in terms of software that is usable and easy to use. Now, Apple's been fantastic on this, not so much with the internet software. Their internet software is abysmal compared to their devices. That it's easy to use. Some of the companies like Comcast has a very nice Xfinity app. Which I don't use, but it's nice because I use Apple TV. But it's, you've got to figure out, there's too many of these apps and how you access this stuff. And so it's going to be really interesting to see who dominates in how you access this stuff, or where the grid, or where the remote control of the future is going to be in terms of pulling down these things. So I think very few people have done a good job in this area. Apple TV is flawed. Roku is flawed. They're all flawed in some fashion, but there's certainly the beginnings pointing the way it's going to be of how people pull down their information from the cloud or wherever they get it from.
So we've already heard now, Ishikawa-san solves the problem of bandwidth by using the broadcast network, which if you think about it, if you've done any engineering, is really an efficient way to deliver content. Now, I'm assuming you've got some way to store locally, because that's the other part of how you keep the on-demand, personalized feature while using basically a broadcasting method. Mike's talked about networks that have to be more flexible, and Kara's basically saying there's no such thing as a network. People are going to assemble what they want using any pipes that they've got available to them. And
but I
the
will
apps
say
that
they
they've
can
got
be
available.
helped. I mean, I think they can be helped doing
Right.
that. But they're sort of out there. It's almost like raised by wolves right now. Everybody's grabbing for what they want.
And of course, Barry from Comcast, who's going next, works for a company that both owns content, delivers content, and uses both a linear and an on-demand format. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. We definitely sit at the intersection of how media and content are redefining network. We have to think about that every day as being the largest North American MSO, and also being on the forefront of how changes in applications and changes in consumer behavior, as Kara touched on, are going to affect the way TV and media are consumed in the future. So we spend a lot of time thinking about how that directly affects our national networks and metro networks and networks in the home, and even the way Wi-Fi has to work with all the proliferation of tablets and smartphones that are now used in the home, and how consumers want a seamless experience, whether it's on their set-top or whether they're traveling to work or sitting at their desk or traveling on business. So it is a challenging time, but we're in a great position to bring these technologies together. And it's great to join you at PTC again. I'm in the wholesale business, so part of my role is to also work with third parties, media companies, content delivery networks, to give them an experience on Comcast to help. One of our businesses, for example, is linear TV distribution, origination of channels, and transport of broadcast signals in the linear world, and we're working with them to digitize and bring a lot more of bring a lot of the delivery over IP. And you look at how we use content delivery networks to accelerate delivery, not just in a linear sense, but also digital. So it's a very interesting time. It's very exciting. I think we're still in the first quarter of this evolution, but it's getting closer and closer to halftime, and ultimately there'll be some winners and losers in this game.
49ers.
Yeah, well, they played amazing yesterday.
They're going to win.
Yeah, well, I like that prediction.
Win everything in San Francisco now.
Good.
Yes, I have one sort of, and it's possibly an unanswerable question at this point, and please, our peers in the audience may have thoughts about this. One of the things that concerns me, and it should never concern the consumer, because consumers don't care how we get the stuff to them, and nor should they. It's not their problem. But if you're in the tubes business, you've got to worry about how much it costs you to deliver the gigabytes that people really want. And we've got to deliver them. If it's content, it's got to be pretty cheap, because I, as a consumer, will not pay you more than what Comcast charges me for my video service, and I can do the math and figure how many programs, how many channels, how many hours per day, what does that cost me per hour? And that's the price that I'm willing to pay for on-demand content, and yet there's a real cost to these networks. And I worry sometimes that we've got a sort of mismatch between the cost of video being delivered to an end user for a low price versus the amount of bandwidth we require for messaging and voice and other applications that, for me as a consumer, are equally important, right? And I don't know if you guys have got thoughts about how to do that, except Ishikawa, of course, has an advantage here.
Oh, yes. So we make the broadcasting networks from scratch. So the cost is so enormous. And I forgot so our services are paid services. So 420, and it's about $5 per month subscription fees. So our business model is, so we must get 5 million subscribers. So it's a big, it's very difficult, but for the communication services, so before going to that, so there are many previous mobile TV services in the United States and in Europe. But I think there is no successful business model right now. So we will not, we will avoid their track. So because one is the price range. So it's $10 to $15 per month or something like that. It's like pay TV channels, but we shift to our service, the cost fee wise is like application services. It's $3 to $5 is probably the same. So we will make use of the volume. We want to make the volume of the business. So that is our key. So infrastructure's cost is very high.
Yeah, and of course you have the advantage of you're essentially multicasting,
yeah.
which, man, if you're going to do
not
multicasting.
Oh, it's really broadcasting.
Yeah. Well, I use multicasting to mean point to multipoint.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, what's interesting is we haven't had a discussion of what's of value, right? Where is the value? To a consumer, I agree they shouldn't have to stop and think about all the parts along the way of the network, but if their user experience is lacking, right? They could have the best application in the world, but if my network doesn't work, if the servers are congested, if I don't have a great experience along the way, it's not going to go anywhere, right? And so there is somebody in the middle that is thinking about how do we prioritize, how do we manage these resources, how do you build it in a better way? And, you know, cost is a big component, right? So bandwidth isn't free. It's getting cheaper, right, because of the scale, but somebody is planning and doing all that work along the way so that there is a good user experience. Mm-hmm. Without that user experience, the best of applications are going to fail.
I think by user experience, I mean is it doesn't hang and it doesn't work. I think that's where most people have the problem with the user experience, that they're sitting there trying to, like today I was trying to watch a video of a new Tiger Woods video. It was just a simple YouTube video, and it hung and it hung and it hung, and that's, for most consumers, that's the bad user experience. Right. It's not necessarily getting away from how many applications are, how many confusing applications they are. I think the biggest thing is that it doesn't work, that you can't get it. And it's not an experience you have with broadcast television. It's not an experience you have with your car most of the time. And so I think what's going to happen is how do you solve that for consumers in a way where someone else isn't going to come in and take advantage of it. What Google's doing in fiber, what do you think they're there for? Because they understand it's an opportunity to start to serve customers in a different way. And I think if a lot of these companies get sort of caught up in their knitting, they're not going to understand that it's, you know, they're in the now right now and not realizing that figuring out a way to serve consumers at the lowest cost and not having these hang-up problems is really the focus. Right. They seem to be arguing about today versus where it's going.
But Barry, Google Fiber, we have to address it.
Yeah, well, I think to the point of 1,600 tech-hungry folks descending on the Hilton all at once definitely clogged up the enterprise network, and I think we all felt that this morning at the hotel. But you know, over time, I think people, you know, the trend, as mentioned, is going to be more devices, more tablets, more ways to consume content. And being able to provision and deliver is going to be critical. So we see, Google Fiber is a viable competitor. They're out there, and consumers are going to want ways of consuming their applications on a larger and larger pipe that they can then choose to provision, many devices on and enable many applications from.
And I think Google Fiber is part of a larger, I don't mean to say Google's a very frightening company, but they are indeed a frightening company. The purchase of Motorola, it all goes together. It's all part of it. They own the device, they're going to own the software applications, they're going to own the fiber. So they'll have the, and I don't know if you just saw that recent interview with Larry Page. I mean, he's a very ambitious person. And he, besides making their hovercrafts and their time machines that they're also doing off to the side, they're very much thinking of a million-person company. I mean, that's their mindset. And so you have to think about how it all fits together. They're not just talking about the fiber delivery, they're talking about the phone delivery, and they're talking about the software delivery, and they're talking about the entire stretch. And then, of course, they're thinking about getting the entertainment on it. So it's, and so in that regard, their competitor is Apple, which thinks less about the delivery, the bandwidth delivery, and more about the devices. But I think very powerful companies are going to have pieces of each of them along the way.
Okay, and since I've gotten the "we're out of time" message, I'll try to summarize if I can, and simply say that all of you have basically said people who do bandwidth delivery have to be cognizant of experience now. End user experience is the business you're really in, and really, frankly, how you get the cost parameters in line is totally up to you. But experience is really the product we've got to sell, not the bandwidth. So, thanks very much, folks, for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining this morning's sessions. Please enjoy lunch next door in the PTC Pavilion, Coral Ballrooms 4 and 5.